Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Today we are talking with Cleveland, better known as f5.6. He's got a new album out on C Blue Audio, A Matter of Light and Depth. It's a great album. How you doing today, Cleveland?
Yeah, not doing too bad. Just finished watching France beat Denmark 2-0 in the World
Oh,
Cup.
oh, are you paying attention to the World Cup?
Yeah, I'm English. We do football.
Yeah, that is true. I think the only time we pay attention to it around here is during the World Cup.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's start talking about your latest album. So there's a lot of variety throughout the tracks, 12 tracks, and all of them sound pretty different. So what would you say is the overarching theme that connects the entire album together?
I tend not to work with themes. I kind of tend to work with stories. And they normally start off as a script. And basically, this one was just about all the things that that's kind of surrounding me, everything in my environment that I look at and I question. Like, most creatives, they create from things they're either passionate about or they worry about, or if they feel strongly. You have to have a strong emotion to be able to create. Having two kids, I'm constantly looking at the changing landscape of the world, really, and try to imagine what the world is going to be like as they grow older and have to kind of stand and fend for themselves. So this album was basically just about that. It's about all my musings, I suppose my thoughts and feelings about that. I mean, you said that each track sounds quite different, and they are, because they kind of deal with specific themes. But the concept and the philosophy behind each track is the same. In everything that can be seen as being beauty, there's an undercurrent. And if you listen carefully to each sound, even when you have the beauty, when I kind of maybe work more with the synths, there's something that's underneath that isn't quite right, something that's quite mechanical, something that's it's almost as a struggle for supremacy in the track. And that is something, that is the one thing that kind of goes through each of the each track, possibly towards the towards the end. But that is the thread that holds everything together. It's this total struggle between which kind of replicates that double-edged sword. Whereas on one side, yeah, everything looks great, and then but there's an underside to that. Just like in the same way when people want to get onto a website because I want to see something, and they're like, yeah, you can visit our website, but here we've got cookies. And you're like, okay, but I just want to be able to see this. I don't want to have to actually sell my soul to a million other companies just to be able to get that little piece of information. So for everything that we do, there seems to be this downside, and I try to kind of portray that through the music. So that's why we have this. As I said, there's a bit of a tussle between. It's not good and evil. There's just opposite sides of a coin. I don't necessarily think that technology is evil. I just would like someone or somebody or a body to be able to stand up and take a responsibility for some of the consequences we have from technology. Through lecturing, I come in contact with a lot of students, and that the sense of insecurity and anxiety is immense. I didn't grow up knowing that if somebody took a picture of me doing something silly, it's going to be there floating around for millions to see until the earth is dust. And this has a big effect on there. What goes on there stays on there. And they're very conscious, and all these things kind of, they don't get to develop in the free way that we did. I could do something silly growing up with my boys, and I can guarantee you the next day is all forgotten. But you can't really do that today. So this was the main idea behind that. And as I said, it was a really personal album, to be quite honest, because everything on there was really to do with the kind of things, or my imagination, that what would be waiting for my kids when they're now adults and having to be able to navigate across this globe.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying there. My daughter is a big fan of TikTok, and yeah, I know you like putting your videos out there and you like getting noticed and all of that. You can actually like ruin your entire life just by like one misstep on the internet. You were trying to convey that through the music. Like, yeah, there's the thing that you want from this, piece of technology, this platform or whatever, but you always have to think about the downside.
Yeah, so
So
that's why it's the light and depth. Everything to me is just a matter of light and depth.
starting with your album, The Shuttle Leaves at Midnight, there was definitely a big change in your music and your presentation. I noticed that pretty much everything before that had the Kaleidosound label attached to it as well. What was the reasoning behind that shift away from Kaleidosound and to this new path that you're taking?
I wouldn't actually call it a new path. What actually happened is that I set out to do a 4-album project, and it was all about evolution. It was a conceptual look and evolution. Kaleidosound is a side. It hasn't gone anywhere, and I'll still be doing things under Kaleidosound. It's just that the Kaleidosound was like the introduction to what I suppose what I'm about and the direction that I'd like to be able to move forward creatively. And it was that combination between the visual and the audio. Actually, Lars, I had no intention of being a music producer or whatever. I don't even class myself as being a music producer. I kind of probably like to think of myself more of a conceptual artist, because I just find creative solutions to the things that I think about. When I thought about doing The Shuttle Leaves at Midnight, it was because of the fact that I got to the end of that series, and I needed to be able to put a break and in between that. And it was just really funny, because all it does, it represents a journey. And that's why it sounds, I suppose that's why the sound is the way it is. I was working with new sounds. Prior to that, I worked slightly differently. I didn't work heavily with synths. I was working more with field sounds and manipulating field sounds and using like found audio and stuff like that for the first 4. I decided that I wanted to kind of maybe just delve into synths a little bit. I was spending a lot of time basically with one of my students he was on one of my albums. He goes by the name of Vasilin, and I love the way that he used the synths, because the way that he used the synths is almost as if it's just an extension of his emotions. And we spoke about this a lot, and I thought to myself, okay, maybe I should. He was always going, oh yeah, you should. I like the stuff that you do, but I'm just hearing lots of other stuff of the stuff that you do, and I'm like, yeah, I know. But for me, I never wanted to rush anything, because I'm in no rush to go anywhere. I'm just expressing myself at stages and increments that are comfortable for me. The Shuttle Leaves at Midnight was exactly that. That was me saying that I'm leaving that stage and I'm basically not going back. So it's very exploratory, and it was about this journey, just to be able to get to the mothership, which is going to take me on to the rest of my journey. If you imagine that even in space travel, you'd have to take shuttles to a space station, and then from the space station to be able to go into interstellar space, you'd have to be able to have another craft that's going to take you there. Well, basically, the shuttle was just taking me from those first 4 volumes, and it was taking me towards the future of where I'm kind of heading with my sound. It was just a way for me to be able to explore different sounds, and to try and work in a different way. I'm always up for trying different ways to work, really, and I suppose, and I'm always challenging myself. I've always tried to be able to push the boundaries of what I actually thought was the limits of my creativity.
So you're talking about you want to do things a little differently, you want to try different methods and techniques. So when you're actually creating music, what are you usually using? Are you very much like a hardware synth kind of guy, or do you use a lot of software?
Well, I'm just basically working with software, to be quite honest. I'd love to be able to work with hardware, but I'm not going to have the space for that. So not at the moment. That's something that I'm looking forward to doing. And I did have a project pegged to be working with someone, but they've got their own space, so it would have been easy for me to kind of go there, and everything was there. That didn't happen, so I started to work on a matter of light and depth instead. And you've got such an array of plugins and synths today, and what I really love about it is the fact that everything can be customized.
Talking about software, like what are some of your favorite pieces of software? What's something that you like to use a lot for your work?
I'm one of these guys that I don't think I ever really have a favorite anything. I pick up the tools that communicate the ideas that I've got. I don't do favorite. I remember somebody asked me this once before. They said, "Oh, what do you like using?" And I could say what I don't like using, but I still use it. It's I don't necessarily I don't necessarily like using Logic, but only for one reason, because of the fact that you've got to work to be able to get your own sound. So I kind of bounce between Logic and Ableton. And as far as plugins go, I kind of come across stuff, or somebody tells me about something, and I'll look into it. Maybe I'll find something that I like. In that last album, I suppose I was working a lot with Absinthe, Pigments.
I'm a big Native Instruments fan, so when I finally got Absinthe, I was like, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's juicy in the processor, but I've learned to work in a way that kind of can help that. So instead of putting effects and channels, I just kind of bust them through, and that takes some of the pressure off the processing power. But I really, there's just something about the sounds that I really like. Plus the way that you can randomize them and customize them, they're just awesome. And then with Pigments, with their 2-3 different engines and how you can layer different sounds, so I'm able to take in like preset synths and then layer in kind of like wavs from recorded stuff that I've done, and then straight away you've just opened up into a completely different like soundscape. Anything that gives me a free range. I'm not the kind of person that loves to be restricted. So it's the reason why most of my cameras, even for my cameras, I just work in manual mode only. I never allow anything to kind of dictate or influence my thoughts as a creative person. Who knows what I'm going to be, I've already started using other things on the next album, which should be during January.
So you're saying you have a new album already in the works and it's coming out in January. Is this one going to kind of follow in the footsteps of A Matter of Light and Depth?
It's based along the same concept. So I'm constantly looking at the human condition. As far as the sounds go, the sounds are going to be slightly different and the tracks are slightly longer. The album's actually, the new album is going to be called Clinical Trials.
I'm already detecting a theme there.
Once again, it's just the way that I see things going, the way that we're constantly, I kind of feel that we're constantly being tested just to be able to see how far we can be pushed as a species. This is just a kind of a little feeling I get that just keeps getting stronger and stronger. I've got no disrespect and a lot of sympathy for anybody that went through the worst during the whole COVID thing. I'm not saying it weren't real, but it's all the scaremongering that goes on. It's like they're saying, okay, if we can get them real scared, maybe we can have a bit more control. Since from the beginning of man, there's only been 2 ways to kind of conquer. You either have to be stronger than someone, or you have to be able to put the fear into somebody. Like a witch doctor, people feared and respected a witch doctor in the same way as a king because he was strong. And it seemed like for a long time we kind of forgot about that. And in the last 15 or 20 years, it just seemed to have come back with a vengeance. And it seems like everything that we do is governed by fear, almost as a way to maybe kind of control, or maybe to be able to get people to be able to think and stop. I'm really not quite sure. I don't fall prey to either, so I suppose I'm kind of lucky. But I do question that, like everything. I'm not turning around and I'm not dictating to anyone. I never kind of do that. I just ask questions, and that's what my music's. That's what my creativity about. It's about asking questions. How can we get people to look at one war when there's 20 other wars going on in the world that's been going on for about 20 years? I don't really understand. They're managing to be able to shift people's focus onto the things that they want them to shift them to, but I'm not quite sure to what end. And that's why I say, that's why I kind of called it. It's like it's a clinical trials. You pay your money and Maybe you get a placebo, maybe you get a nocebo, who knows?
It's been a real interesting time the last, 10 to 20 years. Honestly, as much as I love it, and the fact that, like you said before, you can make an album in your bedroom and thousands of people can hear it, and that's really great. I blame the internet for this, because now anybody can put their thoughts out there for everyone to see. A big lesson I've had to learn over the years regarding that is just like, I don't have to have an opinion on everything. It's very freeing for me. At the same time, I know exactly where you're coming from, because it's just like, well, why are they doing it like this? In my personal life, like my bachelor's degree was in philosophy and my master's degree was in public policy. So I think a lot about like how governments are supposed to operate. Even looking at it from an academic perspective, is like, man, some of this doesn't make any sense.
But then that's just it. And that's not you having an opinion. That's you just questioning. And that's the same that's the way it is. I don't have an opinion. I kind of question, as if to say, well, surely there must be a better way of doing things. There's just too much out there that I really don't understand. And it would be good if I wasn't being dragged into it. Somebody out there is going to try and drag you into it. And then when you don't want to be part of it, then all of a sudden you're kind of part of the problem. Oh, you're the guy that doesn't do, technology, or you don't blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, no, I just kind of choose the tech that I use. But sometimes you kind of get discriminated when you don't fall into that.
It's to me, it's very strange that if you don't want to participate in something, there's always someone there trying to drag you into it, whether you want to participate in it or not. A good example is my wife likes to use Snapchat. I am not really a fan of Snapchat at all, but I come home one day and my wife is like, no, let me see your phone. She grabs my phone and she logs me into Snapchat and she's like, look, I made you a Snapchat account. I'm like, oh, that's great. That's great. So now I use it basically just to send pictures to her and ward off all the spam bots. Just so much spam, and it's just so annoying.
So as I said, this new album kind of, I said it picks up on that, but it's kind of, instead of it being quite like the matter of life or death, it kind of gave you a kind of an overview of all the various different things. And if you was to look at the titles, you kind of get an idea. There's lots of stuff in there. Like on track 8, it's called In Pursuit of Efficiency. It's all the things that they're saying that we have to do to be able to be efficient. But really, we're not being efficient. We're kind of breaking down the building blocks of what it means to be a child. And if you see the video, so that one, you'd understand what I'm talking about. And then we've got the Prometheus project, which follows on straight from there. And the Prometheus project is it's the project whereby we're talking about moving into this new form of human that doesn't necessarily have a physical form. All the tracks have something to do. Track 7, in order to function. This is the one that, this is what we're talking about now. So in order to be able to function, you've got to be part of this stuff, because if you're not part of the machinery, you're on the outside. In that, I'm kind of saying, in that, the track is really quite, it's really quite loose, but it's got this kind of funk almost that's going through it. That's why I used function, because it's kind of got a kind of a soul, and that soul, while everything else around it is really quite spaced out and almost sci-fi, that soul represents our soul. And I'm always trying to think to myself, well, it doesn't matter what happens, I'm going to keep hold of my soul. So the actual beat in there, that's that struggle for me to be able to drag my soul through whatever else is going on, and try to continue to be a human being for as long as possible. If we go back, you got Forever Decreased in Circles, and it's that whole movement. I say decreasing because it is decreasing. The world seems to be shrinking. We've got all these people that we kind of know, but we don't, because we're just tied into this very small circle, and we only ever see that very small circle. I've got friends on Facebook that I've known for, I don't know, since I was at school. So we're talking over 30 years. And somebody will say, "Oh, did you see that?" And I said, "Well, no." So I'm thinking, if Facebook know the algorithm and everything matches, it says that, we went to the same school, we're the same age, we grew up in the same area. Why is it then that I don't get to see someone that I connect with? Now I go on to, I've got a Twitter account. I really don't use that much, but I do have one. And the other day it comes up and it has like trending, and you can delete all the stuff that you don't want to know about, but I couldn't delete the war in Ukraine. I could not delete it. It does not delete. I want to be seeing more of the things that I'm interested in, less of the things that I'm not. I don't particularly want somebody to be sending me something based on something that I might have looked at, because that could have been a typo or something when I went into the internet. So it could be anything. But I hate this feeling that I'm being forced to be able to look. I'm forced to be able to be thinking about things that I don't want to think about, because I have other things to think about. So it's like, if you want to talk to me about human struggle, then this is my question. How can we have a war that's been going on for over 20 years that people don't know about? But then in this country now, we have, we have people that are coming from the Ukraine. And as I said, I don't begrudge that. I just ask the question, how is it that they can come here and they can have free travel and people put them up in homes and whatever? But this invitation is not sent out to other countries who have been stuck in civil wars or coups, or our country never opened up our arms or our gates to them. I just question things.
It's really hard to think about sometimes, just because it can be very emotionally draining having to think about all of these different things all at once.
Well, hence, this is why I write music, because it's my emotional release. Everything that I feel, I kind of put into some form of creative pursuit, whether it is through my photography or video work or video art or music. It doesn't really matter. It's the same flow. It's the same emotion. I'm pretty simple,
right?
In that. There's nothing special about me or strange. I'm pretty simple. That's the way that I react. I'm a passionate person who can maybe sometimes be explosive, but I don't know. Sometimes it's kind of hard. So when it comes to that point, I can just like turn off and then go back in. But when I go back in, I'm going back in to be able to release that through some means. And it helps me to be able to understand. It's just a way for me to be able to, get that emotional release, because otherwise you'd probably go crazy.
So this is the first one you have that looks like it's getting a physical release. You got a cassette out for it.
If you send me your address, I'm going to send you one of these.
Oh, a man after my own heart.
Because I dug out my cassette recorder. So.
Oh wow! So with those cassettes, is that a home dubbed version or?
Oh no, everything has been produced by Band CD. I think they're called Band CD UK.
Is this going to be the only time you try to do a physical release, or are you going to be trying to do that for releases going forward?
This looks like it could be the way forward for the label. I mean, I've already done the artwork for 2 other artists who have got projects coming out. One by the name of Kumar, and the other one is called Rhombus Index. Two great guys. Do you know Rhombus Index?
I haven't gotten to personally talk to either one of them, but I'm familiar with their work and I've covered it quite a lot. Sea Blue, they send me a lot of stuff to like listen to and look at. That's honestly how I found out about you and Rhombus Index, and I want to say at least 3 other artists. So while we're talking about Sea Blue, though, it looks like you've done a lot of work with them, like almost exclusively. So how did you come about working with them?
The label manager, Matthew Duffield, you've spoken with Matthew.
Many times.
Me and Matthew, we go back like over 20 years. Matthew started his career as a journalist, basically. And we were working for various different magazines like DJ and Knowledge Magazine, which was a drum and bass. And I hadn't seen him in the last, he's been living in Barcelona for the last, over 10 years, I think now. But I was going on a trip, and it was literally the February before the first lockdown. I was going to be in Barcelona. I knew he was there. I said, "Listen, Matt, I'm going to be coming over there because I'm coming over with a trip with some school kids." And he was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, cool. Listen, we've got to try and catch up." And I was like, "There, for sure, for sure." So we met up for a drink, and we were talking, and I was asking him what he was doing. He was saying, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I've been doing this label now, and it's going, slowly and slowly, we're kind of picking up." I was like, "Oh," I said, "that's really cool." He was saying, "Well, what are you up to?" And I said, "Well, I'm lecturing. I'm still doing photography. But I'm doing these video art projects." I sent him a link to some of the video art projects and stuff. And we was looking at a few of them just at the table in the bar, just on my phone. And he was like, "Okay, these are cool, but who's doing the music?" And I was like, "Well, I am." He was like, "No way, you're writing the music?" I was like, "Yeah." I said, "Matthew, look, you know me. I have to create from the ground up. There's no use trying to go through and try and find some royalty-free track that's going to work with what I'm actually feeling. So if I have to be in control of everything from the ground up." He was going, "That's really interesting." He said, "You got any more stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I shared with him a folder. I had about like 70 tracks. So I shared with him a folder on my Google Drive. And he was just like, it was insane. The next evening, just before I left to fly back to London, he was like, "Oh, listen," because I don't want to get you too excited now, but I feel that we've got enough here. I think I found some stuff for an EP. Would you be interested in putting it out? And I was just like, thought that was the weirdest thing, because I didn't write it for people to, I don't know, not to be listened to as music. I was, it was part of something else. So that's hence the Collider sound, because this Collider sound is where the sound meets visions. It's basically that sounds that inspires visions, because when I see imagery, I hear sound, and where I hear sound, I see imagery. I've always been that way. He took that away, and before I knew it, Collider Sound and Introduction, that was the first recording on C Blue. After that, he said, "Listen, if you want to, do anything else, then," do you know what I mean? And how would you feel about that? And I was like, wow, because I just thought to myself, well, this is something that, it wasn't something I kind of set after, but I could definitely see how it could work. My main ambition was really to be able to score some sort of moving picture, whether it's animation or short film or whatever. That's why I write. I wouldn't quite say it was like, cinematic in a kind of general sense, but it is cinematic because they're visual sounds. So that's how everything kind of started. I'm like about 2 albums ahead. I stay 2 albums ahead at every time. I'm constantly writing stuff, because there's just so much. And if I don't, as I said, if I don't write it, I think I'm going to go crazy, because I can't hold all this in. I have to have that release. So, and it would be nice, I don't just write, cinematic, abstract, electronic stuff. I mean, I put my hands up. My actual music foundation is actually jazz. That was the first thing that got me into music was jazz. And then I suppose when I got into my teens, I was listening to a lot of maybe like Detroit techno. Definitely jazz, and that was the my background. So I've written a whole number of different stuff, but with nowhere for it to go, because as I said, I didn't actively seek out Siegel Audio as a label, so I wouldn't know how to actively seek out another label now, and to be able to have time for it. So it's just one of those things where it was circumstance. I'm here because of certain circumstances just seemed to align at one point. I suppose one of the first tracks I ever wrote electronically, because I'm probably back in like 2006, and it was really funny. We've got it was a friend of mine, and he was also a DJ and drum and bass producer. He goes by the name of DJ Ron, and he gave me a copy of Reason. What is this? Because I didn't know. I know manuscript. I could understand that, but I had this piece of software that came free with something. It was like EJ or something. I can't remember. It was EJ or whatever. And I was writing stuff. I didn't even have a MIDI keyboard, so I was just using a typing keyboard and and a mouse and preparing things in audio and editing it in audio, and then and to actually get things to kind of sync with a BPM. I was literally cutting it up and putting it on the actual actually on the beat. Now I was doing things in a completely weird way. But when Ron heard this track that I sent to him, he was like, "No, man, you got to have this." So he gave me it. And when I asked him for instructions, he said, "Listen, you are progressive and you're musical, so I'm quite sure you'll work it out." And yeah, he was right. So I was, and I kind of, my first stuff that I was doing, I was writing, I suppose, it was just on that. It was on Reason, which I loved. I loved the sounds. I loved the machinery. With Reason, I just hate the arranging page, because at the time it wasn't a full screen thing. It was this kind of half screen weird thing that it really wasn't intuitive, and it didn't give you the freedom to be able to create or do animation and stuff. But that's where Logic kind of came in, and I think that's what I like about Logic. But it started with me bumping into Matthew in Barcelona, to go back to the actual question.
Pretty much just pure happenstance that you're even releasing music at this point.
Yep. I've got a couple of good mates that for years they've been saying, "Listen, why have you play this stuff to us?" And it's like, awesome. Because they've been saying, "You've been writing music since Music 2000 on the PlayStation," because I used to use that.
Was that like the PlayStation 2, like Music Maker?
It was called Music 2000. And it was like some sort of, you had this little sequence of stuff. And I used to find ways to kind of get sounds to trigger whatever. But yeah, that was really cool. I was just having fun with that. So I've always been doing it. But when I had my first release, they were like, "Look, see, we told you so."
So you said you're like 2 albums ahead. So you have the album that's coming out in January. Yep. And then I'm guessing there's going to be one coming a few months after that as well.
Yeah, I mean, but that hasn't even been given a date, because to be quite honest, the label don't even know about that one yet. I kind of like, I can't do things by request, so I just don't work. So they go, "Oh, look, we kind of like to put something out in blah blah blah." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool," and I've already got it. I don't have to, because then I think I would feel like a producer, that I'd happen to be doing something. And then when I feel that there's time constraints, then I think that will probably have consequences on the way that I actually work, which is really quite freely. Previously, Shuttle Leaves at Midnight. Right. I wrote the whole thing across 5-6 days. It was in that whole COVID period. It was like last year summer. My family had gone away for 5 weeks. So my partner's Italian, and her and the kids, they went off to Italy for about 5 weeks. I was just here on my own, and during the day I'll be just cleaning. We'd only just moved to this place, so I was doing a lot of stuff around the house, and then in the evening I just had this whole space, and I was just like started thinking about, okay, what am I going to do for the next project? But instead of doing the next project, I thought, okay, I'm going to do something to announce the fact that I'm working towards the next project. So I already had something in mind, but as I said, I feel that I have to put things in an order. So I wouldn't say that I'm kind of OCD or anything, but I do have a thing about things following some sort of order. So I kind of held back on what I was going to be doing, which was just as well, because that fell through anyway. And I wrote the album in 5 days. So like right now, I've probably 2 tracks, no, 1 track shy of what I want to do for the next album, the one that comes out in January, and the other one I'm 50% through already.
Well, for someone who doesn't consider himself a producer, you're pretty productive, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's kind of weird considering that 2020 was the first time I released anything, and now, I'm kind of looking at my 9th release in January, so that's not bad. And the albums haven't been short. I mean, there's 12 tracks on that one. The shortest album was Shuttle Leaves at Midnight, because as I said, that really was a shuttle. It was just something to kind of experiment and get me to the next project. all the other projects, the first two I had fun because they were all reminiscent of, I wanted it to be almost cinematic, so that they had like intermissions in the first two. It just reminded me of going to the cinema with my younger sister and my dad, and you know, they used to have these intermissions in the cinema, and they used to come around with like, you know, treats and like ice cream or whatever, and they always had an intermission and whatever. You'd have music, so I like the concepts. I'm very much a concept based person. So when I
Yeah.
wrote those albums, it was like an intermission. First you saw that part, then you got an intermission, then you go to the next part of the story, and so forth and so on. So the shuttle leaves at midnight was kind of like an intermission, if you like, in between two slightly different projects. Keep your eyes peeled on Bandcamp, and that's /f5.6. You can also see little snippets on what I'm working on my Instagram profile, which is f5.6_Collider_Sound. I'm hoping by the time that this goes out, my website will be up and running again. I basically have my website up, and my website is a combination of my creative work. So it's a combination of photography, video art, and the music, basically.
Okay. So once you get the website up and running, where can we find that at? What's your address?
Yeah, f5.6.co.uk. Through the website, there'll be links to various different areas.
So for this other stuff that you're looking for another label for, is it still under f5.6, or is this under a different project?
I think I'll probably keep it under f5.6, or maybe I might keep f5.6 for the more cinematic stuff that I'm doing, and maybe Collider Sound. I haven't really made a decision until I can find a label that are willing to kind of accommodate the beat related stuff that I'm doing, and that stuff's not precise. It'll probably be Collider Sound, but the f5.6 I think I'd probably want to keep for the more cinematic stuff, because just by the name itself, f5.6 is an aperture and a lens, so it kind of ties in with the whole cinematography thing.
I did kind of wonder. I was like, I don't know exactly what that means, but it sounds really cool. I love it.
Yeah, it's just an aperture, and it was an aperture that kind of, it's an anomaly, that aperture, because in a standard lens you'll go from f2 to f4, and then you have this f5.6, and I never quite understood that. And then you go f8, so it's supposed to be reciprocal of 2. So, but there is a reason why it's f5.6, and it's due to the measurements of the actual spherical lens. But when I thought about it, I just thought, well, f4, if I said f4 to somebody, they definitely know it's photography, or f8 or whatever. Then I thought about it, and it was really to do with my photographic business. So f5.6 has been around for God knows how many years. So, but when I said to Matthew, and he was like, a name, and I was like, wow, I've got no idea what I was going to do. He said, well, why don't you keep f5.6, because it's photographic, which is, and your sound is kind of cinematic, and so maybe you just keep that. And I thought, well, yeah, okay. I kind of saw his point, and I stuck with it.
We're gonna be on the lookout for your new album coming out in January. Pick up cassettes. There's still some cassettes available for A Matter of Light and Depth. f5.6.bandcamp.com. We can also find you on Blue Audio, which is cblueaudio.bandcamp.com. You have an Instagram, and that was f5.6_Kaleidosound. And I noticed Blue Audio, they post a lot of your stuff up there on their Instagram page as well.
We kind of try to keep it moving and supporting. As far as Spotify, like, I'm constantly including some of the other, my label members. There's a lot of inspiration I'm getting from the guys that are on there. They've been doing this stuff a lot more than me. So it's really nice that I get their support, and we just share the support and the love, really.
It's been great talking to you, Cleveland. Looking forward to the stuff you got coming out in the future. cblueaudio.bandcamp.com, f5.6.bandcamp.com, and then Instagram, of course, f5.6_Kaleidosound. All right.
It's been a pleasure finally getting to talk to you as well, Lars.
I love it when I finally get to talk to people who I've only talked to like over the internet. It's just like, oh my God, you're actually a real person.
A real person, yeah.
Wow, this is amazing. Thanks, internet. You have some good points.
Yeah, exactly. The double-edged sword. It's the double-edged sword.
Hey, this is really nice.
Yeah, sure.
All right. It was great talking to you, Cleveland. And we'll catch up with you again later.
All right. You enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thanks. You too.